So welcome to Albany County Direct. I'm your host, County Executive Dan McCoy. On today's episode, we're joined by Moira Manning, Commissioner of Albany County Department of Children, Youth, and Family. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, County Executive. I'm really excited about being here.
There's so many issues in your department that we can talk about, but we're going to focus on a few ones we want to address to the community. But, we're here to talk about a deeper, important issue, unsafe sleep deaths among infants. And unfortunately, we tackle this issue, we educate people, we get out in the public, and then it comes back. So we want to talk a little bit about that, but we have run education campaigns, been spreading the word about this for over a decade, but recently the number of babies dying from unsafe sleeping has gone up again, unfortunately. We've had 4 die so far this year, which, my prayers and everything go out to the families because it's devastating to have to go through that for these family members.
Absolutely.
But let's start with the basics for our listeners. What do you mean when we talk about unsafe sleeping practices?
Okay, unsafe sleeping practice is really putting a baby on their stomach or putting the baby on the side, because babies really can't have any control over their head and can roll over and get suffocated. And the other important thing is that they're in a crib or a bassinet. And those cribs or bassinets cannot have any blankets or bumpers or toys in them, because, again, the baby can't roll over and therefore would suffocate in that. And, unsafe sleep, these fatalities are 100% preventable. And, as you said, this year we've had 4 fatalities. Last year we had 2 fatalities of infants, and the 2 years prior to that we had 1. So my concern is the numbers are going up, and we really need to step up and do a stronger campaign.
Which is so tough, when you talk about these tragic deaths that we have, and trying to educate people, because I know when I was a younger parent and our kids were babies, it's so much easy for the baby to fall asleep in your arms while you're laying on the couch, or you bring them into bed because they're crying and they won't stop, and people don't realize how our mattresses are different than their mattresses, and that they can just easily just sink more, like you said, because they can't roll on their own, or in the middle of the night. Unbeknownst, sometimes people roll on their own infants, which is sad in its own because they got to live with that. And we want to prevent that stuff. But there's a lot of information and misinformation out there. What are some of the most common myths or for caregivers might believe about infant sleep?
Right, because, co-sleeping is the number one cause of these fatalities, unfortunately. And, the myth that the parents have is really that my child needs me. I need to be close to the baby, so I bring them into bed. In addition, when you have a newborn baby, you're extremely exhausted, and you're trying to get sleep, and bringing the baby to bed is just more convenient. And that goes as well for women that are breastfeeding. They'll breastfeed in the middle of the night, they're exhausted and can fall asleep and then unfortunately roll over the baby. Another thing is they want to put the baby on their stomach so the baby doesn't choke. But that is really a common myth, that being on the back is the best way, because if a child does need to spit up, it would come up in the front, and being on the back is the best way. The other final thing is really rocking your baby to sleep. People think that they need to be holding the baby. You're holding the baby when you're rocking them, and it's also an opportunity for that child to relax and self-soothe. And it's so important to have a structured routine for these babies around nap time or even bedtime.
You bring up so many great points, and we've heard terms like ABC, a safe sleep. What does that phrase mean for caregivers?
Absolutely. So ABCs is really the campaign that we use in Albany County as well as across New York State. And it's really saying that the child needs to be A, alone, and B, on their back, and C, in their crib. That's the safest environment for these youth or children to be in. It's really important that this is done not only in, at nap time, but also at nighttime. And it's important that they're crib has a firm mattress, as you had indicated, and that the sheets are fit tightly, and not to have anything else in the crib. And a lot of parents believe that, oh, I have to keep my baby warm. There's things out there such as the sleep sack, or you can swaddle your baby, or just put on, pajamas for them, with the little feet.
Right.
And that will keep them warm, because you also don't want your child to be too warm overnight.
Totally agree with you. And so many great messages about the ABC, the safe sleep. Please, you can go online, you can look at this, you can go to our website, you can go to DCYF, you can look at this information and help spread the word. If there's one simple message you want to put out there to caregivers to take away from this episode, what would it be?
It would be really have a safe environment for your child, and don't lay a baby down on a couch or anything other than their crib. Even if it's for a short period of time, it is very dangerous because co-sleeping, it could be with a sibling, it could be with the parents, or like you had indicated, falling asleep on the couch. That happens many times, and the baby gets stuck in between the cushions and therefore can't breathe. So we do have our Cribs for Kids campaign as well. And so if any family is in need of a crib so a child has a safe environment to sleep in, please contact us at 518-447-2525.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that's such an important issue, that we do provide these cribs for families that can't afford them, because we want to make sure these infants are in a safe environment. What breaks our heart is when we go into someone's house, or God forbid this happens, and the crib's still in a box. We can't legally set it up. We can't do that. The family has to do it, and it's just a tragedy when you walk in there and they have a crib on the ground that they didn't assemble with a mattress, and they're sleeping with it. And it goes back to what you said earlier. Parents feel it's easier when you're napping on the couch to have the baby on your chest. It's cool. It's comfort. I've been there. I've done it, so I'm not going to be a hypocrite. When my kids were little, I had them laying on my chest, and it's the coolest thing in the world. But when they fall asleep, then you got to move them to the crib, and not fall asleep with them. And that's what has happened. And again, in the middle of the night, please, if any of the listeners take anything away from this, don't bring them into your bed. Don't lay there with them. I know you want to go back to sleep. You got a busy day ahead of you. But you don't want to have to live with that tragedy if that happens. And, it's your department does so much. And before I end this, I just want you, if you can just phrase quickly some of the stuff that your department does, because it's so vital in the community. And, the hardest thing when you're going down, I said, look, I haven't raised taxes for 11 years. But there's services that we have to provide, and unfortunately people can't afford it, or we have to educate them on the statistics or the data analytics that we're seeing around the county that's increasing, or we just got to continue to educate people so it doesn't happen again. So what in your department, in a nutshell, what are some of the things you would say?
I would say, our largest division is our child welfare. But, I want people to know out there that Child Protective may get involved with your family, but we're here to help. And we can provide services and supports to you and your children so their needs get met. We also have our special needs division that really identifying children with developmental disabilities and challenges so they can have successful outcomes when they are school-aged. Our children's mental health is strong in providing supports to those students who are suffering from anxiety or depression, and to keep them in the community rather than psychiatric hospitalization.
Yeah, it's people don't realize we do OT, speech, all that for kids, evaluate them. We do transportation for special needs or kids that are in private schools or public schools that have to get to another school to get some type of services. We're in charge of that in the county. There's so much, from foster care and, taking care of that and having kids get adopted in this county and then matching them up with families and following through with them. Your department's really like a fabric of the whole community, what's going on. And I want to commend you, your deputy, all your workers in that department that do a tough job day in, day out. People don't realize what you have to get when you have to do a home inspection. You have to make sure it's a safe condition or train the parents, basically, about putting stuff away, cleaning, or just, whatever it may be, life skills in general. And then you do this great Christmas fund every year that you get into the community. And it always breaks my heart and we're going to do an early pitch for that this year.
All right.
Because these kids, they're not saying, "Hey, I want an Xbox. I want a blanket, or I want a pillow, or I want some jeans, or I want some bedding, or silverware to eat off of." And that breaks my heart, because then you see other kids and they got 1,000 presents under the Christmas tree. They're out there just wanting to be a kid. I want a bike, and these people just want basic needs. And your department has to deal with a lot of stuff like this and tragedies of infant sleep. So I'll say, Tenny, that you can add if you want to before we end here if there's anything you missed. I know you do a variety of more stuff.
We do. But I think the other thing about safe sleep is, oftentimes, and I've done it as a parent as well, you put the baby in the car seat and take them for a ride, and then they fall asleep. That's also very dangerous because the baby's head, again, has no control, and they can block their airway. So once a baby falls asleep in a car seat, it's important to take them out and put them back in the crib.
To our listeners, this is it's a painful but vital conversation that we have to have, and we have to continue to educate the public about to prevent unnecessary tragedy, and that's what we're trying to do, because pain goes on forever. The parents got to live with this. The workers from the county have to go and live with this, and you try, and we're humans. We make mistakes. You get fatigued. I say to parents, I know it's tough. When your baby's crying, just step away, and just sometimes they'll cry themselves to sleep. It's tough. But please, if you take anything away from this, like the ABCs or the education, to any listeners listening to this, educate other people, point them in the direction of this podcast or to our website in Albany County to get all the information you need, or call the number. And if people need cribs, please call us. We'll get you the crib. Can't set it up, but we can give you the tools and the resources to have a better, safer outcome. So thank you, Moira, for joining us today. And to everyone, again, please, if you're interested in learning more about this topic, visit the links in our episode and figure it out. Get there, and be sure to check out our other episodes on Spotify and Apple Music, and subscribe so you never miss an update. And you're going to get more of Albany County Direct to talk about more agencies, what we're doing, because a lot of people in our community don't realize what county governments do. It's like we're sleeping selling. Kind of after COVID, people start to realize, from mental health, to all the services we provide. But still, it's funny, as I bounce around the county and I go to different events, when I talk to people, they're like, "Oh, I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you did that." And I go, "Well, thank goodness you don't need our services." But unfortunately, there's people out in our community that need our help, need our support. Younger parents that don't know how to be parents themselves because they didn't have role models in their life, and now they got to be the role model for their child, or just help navigating the system of government to make things better for them. And that's why I love being county executive. The men and women of this county workforce are second to none. We're in the office 100% every day, not 50% every week, grinding it out, and again, continue to deliver services, the quality of our service, expand them by keeping taxes down. And I do want to commend you and your team again, because you make me look good with the stuff you do out there. And to the parents, it's never too early to get your child checked for speech or OT before they get into the school age, and tackle these issues now so there's no issues in the future. Same thing with learning the ABCs of what we're putting out there for this campaign. So thank you to listeners. Thank you to you. I appreciate everyone.
Thank you, County Executive. I appreciate it.
Thank you.